So grateful for these beautiful sessions and your pointers. Thanks, Damien. I have a question regarding the practice of self-inquiry. Daily, I am present as the watcher, during meditation and in daily life, but I'm not feeling progress. Do you have any advice for practice? I heard you mention watching the chakras. How do you do this? I admit that most of the time I'm still stuck, identified with my persona. Yeah, so I wouldn't worry about this idea of progression. I know that seems logical, that you want to see if there's progression, otherwise it's wasting your time, but I wouldn't worry about that. So I think it's really beautiful, the I Am practice. I never really got into it, but it's kind of basically trying to question everything that you have built as the construct of you. This idea that you are good, you are bad, that others are good or bad, or that you're better than or worse than, or you like this over that. And seeing that none of that is who you are. That's something that's appearing in who you are, and who you are is much deeper than that. It's this empty looking, which is vast and still and free. However, identification isn't just mental, it becomes physical. And we kind of know this. So, like what we say in English, and maybe they say this in American as well, like when you're afraid of something, is you shit yourself. So you poo yourself. Like, so I shat my pants because you're afraid of it. So we know that fear, that we feel physical fear in our abdomen, and that this has an effect on our bowels and can make us poop ourselves. So we know that, and we also say that we have heartache, like I broke my heart, he or she broke my heart, or seeing that dog hurt broke my heart. So we know that we feel our feelings in our body, that they're not just a mental thing. Like some people only experience feelings as a mental thing, but that's because they've put so much on their third eye, on this chakra, on thinking, that they've just cut themselves off from the body. But you do actually feel your emotions in your body, and your body has an emotional memory. So in so many different ways, it's so complex. Like if I ever go into schools in England, for some reason they always use the same carpet or something. And when I go into them and I smell that carpet, it always reminds me of going to school when I was a kid. So we have these amazing bodies, and that can either make my heart tingle with joy, or it can even make me feel afraid, because school was quite terrifying for me. So there's different associations that we have, but we're having our associations with the world very physically as well as mentally. So if you see someone you don't like, you actually might feel it in your body way before you think, oh, I don't like them. Your body's already become averse to them. And this is emotional memory that's happening in your body. And I don't know how it really works, but or even now I do this, but when I was waking up, Roger Castillo, my teacher, he taught me to massage my body to help release these trapped stories in my body. And I could find that I massaged particular areas of my body and a story could come out. You know, I'd go for a massage and then I'd start wailing. And I discovered that like I held stories in my body, like I held insecurity in my shoulders, or I held stress in my back, or I protected myself by hiding my heart or not speaking out. And I held that physically. And I also discovered that they were all connected to these main chakra points in my torso. So when I felt fear, I felt it in the sacral chakra, which is below the belly button. When I felt heartache, I felt it in the heart. When I felt disempowered, I felt it in the solar plexus. When I felt like I couldn't voice my opinion or I wasn't heard, I felt it in my throat, or too many emotions. When I overthought or put too much energy in working or something, or using the mind, or being empathetic, I could feel it here. When I felt cut off from something bigger, I would feel it here. Sexuality, I would feel in my sacral. And then in my root, it would be more trust. The sacral and the root for me can be confused. They can also be opposite way around. trust and groundedness. And like these chakras were connected to all parts of my body, so I could actually massage my hand and then feel the heartache in the heart. I don't know if you've ever done that. You've been for acupuncture or acupressure, and you've massaged a point in your body, and then you can feel it go all the way around your body. You can feel it in different areas of the body, like you massage here and then you feel it in your head. It's magical. I think that we get born into this life with karma, so with body memory, and then I think that we develop it from our thoughts and our childhood experiences. So I know that I got born into this life with one past memory of being a witch. I might have told you this before, that I have this memory in my system, and I will cry if I see this story, or if someone talks about it. I may even cry telling you about it. That my memory is that I was a witch, or this last life was a witch. She was a witch, and she had a daughter out of wedlock, and they lived in the forest, and nobody knew that she had a daughter, but they came to take her away to kill her because she was a witch. And as she was being taken away and burnt on the stake, her suffering was like, what about my daughter? Like, who's going to look after my daughter? So it was all about that agony of like the daughter being left with no one to look after her. And this story isn't from this life, but I know it's partly to do with this karma, this machine. Like when I see it on TV, the story like comes up in my body. Roger was like so good at teaching this stuff, the bodily stuff. And he used to say, you know, watching TV or listening to music is a really good way to work out what your body's holding on to, because you have more reactions towards stories that are sensitive in your system, and you'll be more attracted to those stories. So I used to use like TV as like a way of working out what stories were in my body. And the body, emotions and the thoughts are connected. What we tend to do with seeing that everything's a story and using the I am is we're like windscreen wipers. We're wiping away the thoughts. So our thought starts thinking about like you know, a fearful thing that you haven't done. It starts getting into fear, and then we say, who is the one thinking? And then we kind of like wipe that away, but then the thought keeps coming back. And I think that's because your body, like in your body is having an emotional response. And so there's an emotion that's happening in your body, and then the thought and the emotion are kind of like connected. And so the emotion keeps producing that thought again. And so in that case, then I would get you to look at your emotion. So what is the emotion or the feeling that is connected to that story? So if you're having fear about, what could you have fear about? About your wife leaving you. If you have fear about that, then you wipe away by saying, who am I, and then you keep practicing that, and it keeps coming up. But at some point you need to investigate, like, what is the emotion connected with that? Like, what emotion am I avoiding? Because our whole life we're taught to avoid emotions. Like Eckhart Tolle calls it the pain body, to just cut off from the body and be up in the head. And then, but your body is having an experience, and maybe there's an energy that wants to come out of your body that needs to be addressed and looked at in your body and accepted in presence. So it's then coming to the body and seeing, where is that? Like the fear of losing my wife is in my heart, and then just making connections with it. So when your wife comes in or something, there is pain that's coming up in your heart. And then the reason that you can't stay with the practice of who am I is because there's a big, strong emotion that keeps creating that story again and again and again. So then it's coming to, what is that emotion? That emotion, like at its root, is the fear of abandonment. So it's like the fear of abandonment is nothing to be afraid of. It's simply a feeling. When you hide from that feeling and you push it away and you don't acknowledge it, it creates lots of seeking energy, because what you're saying is that feeling is going to kill me and overwhelm me, and I can't bear to experience it. But when you do the opposite and just bring it into experiencing, it's like it becomes not a big deal. It's not about getting rid of the feeling, it's about holding that feeling of presence and seeing that there's a freedom beyond that feeling. In the beginning, when you start doing this, though, it feels rotten, and you're so attached to not wanting to feel it that you can't feel a freedom while having that feeling. It's just like your identification, that feeling is so strong, so it takes time. So that's what I talk about with the chakras, is like seeing what your body's feeling and going deeper into that. And bringing the body into presence. I hope that makes sense. It can be confusing. And that's what I mainly do when I work with people in sessions. Like I do spend time pointing out that that's not who they are, but normally I try to encourage them to stay with their feeling. I can stay with the sensation and not run away from it. Like I'm trying to get them to admit the sensation to themselves, because often they don't want to admit it. Like I remember with Roger, like he would point out that I was angry about stuff, and I didn't want to admit that to myself. It was so painful. And you have to admit that you feel angry before you can allow it in. Like, I feel really angry, I feel really rageful about this. And then underneath the anger, there's something deeper, there's a vulnerability. But you first of all have to admit it, and that's a hard stage as well, because often the ego doesn't want to admit what it is. It wants to blame others or blame itself for what it is. But it doesn't want to admit the initial feelings. Like it wants to, like, I didn't want to be seen as angry, I wanted to be seen as good, and so I was painful admitting it. And it felt very invasive of Roger, even though he wasn't being invasive. When he'd point it out, he'd say, you know, are you feeling angry now? I'd be like, no, I'm not angry. But it was great because it made me then feel that in my body, this overwhelming anger or overwhelming vulnerability. And see that there's nothing to run away from, that's simply feeling and sensation. It's a really intense thing, and you know, when you're angry, it's like everything is angry, like, Wah! Like a dragon breathing fire. But a dog is not afraid of its anger. Like if Khaleesi gets angry or growls at something or barks at something, she's not afraid of it, she just is it. And through the non-afraid fear of it, and because she can't create a personal self, she just is it, and then it passes through her system. It's only the human that wants to deny what it is, and it has all these complicated layers onto what it is.